Hey guys, so in this session we did some microdose cleans and some microdose front squats. Microdose meaning just very low volume. The reason I went with this approach was because I had rugby 3 hours after. So I like to do workouts on my practice days. I don't really ever do any workouts on game days. I'm just way too nervous before the games. It would probably help though, the same way that it helps the practices. I do feel it potentiates the practice. I warm up a lot better. My hips and low back feel a lot better. And maybe it's in my head, but I feel like I move a little bit crisper and more quickly too. As far as the numbers were concerned, the cleans, I worked my way up to 275, which is a prior PR, as you guys know. It was hard, so it was 10 RPE for sure on that. When I got 275 previously, it actually felt super easy, but it felt really hard today. I went to the front squat, I worked my way up to 295, got it, then I put 305 on there and I failed it. That was the entire workout. I'd also like to go into my rationale as far as my concurrent training, why I value the traits that I value in terms of hypertrophy, power, max strength, all those kinds of things, and just kind of provide some rationale behind why I make the decisions I make. If I were to stop playing rugby, which I obviously will someday, will I change my training, this kind of thing. So here's the workout, and then we'll talk about that. So my training is concurrent training. Most of you guys will understand that. For those of you that don't, that just means I'm combining a lot of different fitness qualities into a microcycle, a 7-day period of training. So I will be touching max strength. I will be touching power. I will be touching hypertrophy. I will be touching conditioning of all different kinds. Just because my sport demands it, it requires steady state type of conditioning, max effort conditioning, and everything in between. I will do all of that in a 7-day period every single week. Now, with that being said, those of you that are super experienced in training will understand this. If I were to dedicate and pour all of my resources into something like max strength, for example, I'd have to start taking away from those other sessions, right? Now, that would be super cool if I wasn't playing sports competitively. But as a competitive athlete, I value the sport more than I value anything else. Now, as much as that pains me to say, I love training, but I also love my sport and I want to be good at it and stay good at it. So if I were to devote too much resources to, let's say, I want a 405 back squat or something like that, or I want a 405 bench or something like that, that would take a lot of resources and it would take away from my ability to maintain and or slowly build those other qualities that will have a better carryover to sports, right? So power absolutely has the best carryover to sports, more so than max strength. Why is this, right? Sporting motions are quick, they're violent, they're sudden, they require max rate of force development, just like that. They're not slow grinder back squats, they're not slow grinder deadlifts like that. The ability to move weights that are Moderately heavy, super, super fast and violently carries over really well to the court, the ice, the mat, the pitch, so on and so forth, right? So that's why I bias a lot of my training towards power, 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 right? So when we talk in terms of our force velocity curve, again, some of you will know this, some of you won't, right? We have our max strength movements where the movement is slow, but the force is high, right? Then we have our speed movements. So think of like just body weight sprinting and stuff, you're weightless. Then in the middle of that curve, that's the power zone. That's where we're taking moderate weights. We're moving them with max intent as fast as possible. Now, that being said, in terms of strength, there are certain benchmarks that I feel like you should hit. And I've talked about this in previous videos. I'm not going to go into this. You can check out my video on sports training, sports-specific training that I made a while back. But once those benchmarks are hit in terms of whatever you deem to be your strength standards, like squat twice your body weight, this is all arbitrary, bench 1.5 times, some sort of power movement, whether it's a clean or a trap bar jump or something, you get to those levels, I would argue trying your hardest just to build a squat or just to build a deadlift or just to build insert anything, including cleans as well, is you're starting to lose track of what it is you're actually trying to do as an athlete. At least me. We're talking about me right now, So I'm doing a good enough job in progressing good enough in all of these things. None of them are really all that impressive given my body weight. None of the strength is all that impressive. None of the power, movements are all that impressive. If I was a competitive, barbell athlete, then obviously all the resources would be poured into that. When I'm done playing rugby, I do want to have a YOLO phase where I just gain some weight and I get as strong as possible. I just say, let's crank those numbers of the back squat, the deadlift, all that kind of stuff up. But right now, when I'm playing, right, they're going to be just good enough. And they're going to try to complement what I do out there on the field. And basically say, okay, I'm training generally. I'm training concurrently right now. Bunch of different fitness qualities all at once. Very slow progression. None of these things are taking away from the actual rugby games or rugby practices, but they're making me bigger, faster, stronger, and hopefully more resilient to injury. And believe it or not, all of these different traits, right, we'll call power, hypertrophy, and max strength. I actually value hypertrophy the most. That's why you will see me in a lot of these workouts that are not the microdose sessions or just pure power rate of force production sessions, doing top set drop sets, doing the bodybuilding movements, right? Because I do value trying to build that muscle while I can, right? The benefits of having more muscle, I don't really even need to go into that, right? And we all know as naturals that aren't the gear heads and the juice heads and stuff like that rely on our little needles to put on muscle, it's hard to come by as a natural. You gotta work hard, right? You gotta progressively overload. You gotta train close to failure, right? So compound movements, taken up to a top set, you're gonna get some good hypertrophy stimulus. Drop the weight back down. Do your working sets and go close to failure. 1 hour IR or actual failure, and you're going to get good hypertrophy out of that. That's why you'll see me doing so much of that kind of stuff. Anyways, guys, if you've made it this far, thanks for listening to me ramble on and on and on about training. As always, thank you for watching.